everyone, I'm Bonnie Bernstein. Welcome back to the Athlete Effect podcast, where we're telling the stories of amazing women thriving across all industries thanks to life skills learned through sports. Today's guest is a former Babson field hockey goalie who's not only channeling her inner athlete to kick cancer's ass. Elissa Kalver is turning pain into purpose with her nonprofit, WeGotThis.org, the very first gift registry for cancer patients. Okay, I want you to stop what you're doing and think about this scenario. Imagine having everything going for you. Wonderful spouse, a job you love, a beautiful daughter about to turn 1. You are on cloud 9, and then one day you're told you have stage 4 terminal breast cancer. And if you're lucky, you have 5 to 7 years to live. What would you do? What Elissa's done will blow your mind. An incredible story of pushing yourself beyond your boundaries the way we learn how to do as athletes to change the world. Before we start though, I want to take a sec to give you your flowers. If you're here with us today, you want to learn how to be a better leader by harnessing your sports superpowers. Please take a moment to subscribe, download, share with other leaders in your life, and get ready to be inspired by Elissa Kalver. Elissa Kalver, welcome to the Athlete Effect Sisterhood.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited to be with you. And when I was preparing and I was reading your speaker's bio, it put such a huge smile on my face because the very first sentence is the following. As a record-breaking saleswoman and former collegiate athlete, Babson College alum Elissa Kalver has always known what it means to succeed. This is literally the first thing any company, organization, sports team is going to see when they're looking to hire somebody to motivate or inspire. Why is it so important for you to have your athlete self in that first sentence?
I love that you pointed that out because of course I wrote that, but I didn't think of it in that way. It felt so natural to me. And I think that's really a testament to what we're going to be talking about today too. It's important to me that people know all of how I am, and I view the way I've been in my career, like the way I was through high school and college and sports, it's all that same piece of who I am as an athlete is who I am as a person. It's who I am as a business person. It's who I am as a parent. And that was very organic writing that. I didn't think of it intentionally. It's just a part of who I am, and thank you for bringing it up.
It's so nice because I've come across so many women in the sisterhood for whom it's not until way later in life that they start connecting the dots between sports participation and career success. Why has it always been so omnipresent for you, you think?
I think the fact that my sports career technically ended earlier than I thought it would in college with a couple injuries and things, that when I pivoted not playing sports, that was such a big part of my identity, especially in college. Yeah. I then really drove into sales, which is in that same sentence. And I was like, oh, I love this because this is sports. This is, a piece of how I am on the field, how I am as a team, how I am competitive. And it just felt natural that that was how it happened.
So let's back up. When you were younger, you were more the theater kid, interested on maybe performing on Broadway. So let's talk about the early days for Elissa Kalver that was not necessarily sports.
Yeah, early on, I loved plays and musicals. I wasn't a great singer, but I really liked acting, and I was always the fun, loud character, like the Queen in Once Upon a Mattress, things like that. I was even Pumbaa in The Lion King once. And I loved that, and then as I kind of grew through middle school, I always did the plays, and when I was entering into high school was when I'd always played tennis. That was the one sport that I really liked, I was good at. I liked hand-eye, reflex stuff.
Recreationally or on a team or?
I played competitively, like lessons and things like that, and then played in matches, like in a league in my hometown before high school, and then in high school played varsity. And that was my plan in high school, like I'm gonna play tennis. And then going in, a lot of my friends were starting to play field hockey. And I'd gotten into shape more than I had been in my life. And I was like, that sounds fun and everyone's doing it, so why don't I, everyone's doing it. No.
Everyone's doing it, so why don't I do it too?
I mean, why not? And then we can, that way it's such an embedded part of your life, right? Every day after school and all these things. So I went to tryouts expecting to be on the freshman team, right? There's freshman team, junior varsity and varsity. And when they started dividing people out, I was in good shape, but I didn't even know the rules of field hockey. So
like, she's an athlete. We want her to do something. We just don't know what it is.
So they were like, okay, why don't you try being a goalie? And there are two goalies, Jelly and Heather. And my name's Elissa with an E, and everyone was confused by that. And I was little at the time, so they were like, all right, we're calling you Big E. And it was just really funny because I was like the littlest one. And I started, put on all the pads. I mean, that alone, you have to learn how to put on field hockey pads. And got in the net, and I loved it. And I was good at it. It felt really natural. And so I ended up making the JV team and being the JV goalie my freshman year, which is so bizarre. I went from not thinking of myself as an athlete other than tennis, but it was just different. I hadn't been an athlete in a team sport. I had done youth soccer growing up, but I wasn't the star player, right? And this was where I was like, wow, I'm not only doing it, but I'm actually doing it way better than I thought I would. Yeah. And I grew into, being the varsity goalie and captain and traveling nationally and playing very competitively even abroad and of course in college.
What is it about being a goalie that aligns with your personality?
I mean, I think most athletes will agree that goalies are a bit quirky. I think we definitely have a bit of spiciness to us.
I would say goalies are a few sandwiches short of a picnic basket. There's something going on upstairs that the rest of us can't necessarily relate to, but in a great way.
Yeah, and it was the kind of thing too where you start, being under pressure, to that extent wasn't something I'd experienced, and for some reason it just I fell right into it and it felt right. Everything that I did mattered. Any save that I had mattered, any goal against me mattered, whether it was good or bad, it mattered a lot. And I think that, in hindsight, it makes me even anxious thinking about it, but I wasn't anxious then. The amount of pressure I could handle was so high.
Yeah. So in high school, how many different sports did you play?
So when I got to high school, I ended up playing JV field hockey. And then that was the year that they had the first ever Andover High School girls ice hockey team.
Okay.
And just like how I got sucked into field hockey, now that I was a goalie, I got sucked into ice hockey too. And I literally did not know how, I had rollerbladed growing up, but I didn't know how to ice skate. So I was pretty natural in learning how to skate, but we had to go for open skate nights so I could learn how to stop. I wore tons of multiple pairs of sweatpants because I was falling. And so before tryouts, I learned how to stop. And, again, had to learn how to put on totally different goalie equipment. Sure. And it was such an amazing experience of doing that because it was a lot of the combination of the field hockey girls. It was a lot of girls who had played ice hockey growing up, and all the dads who were our girls there's finally a girls team. And then after that played tennis for a couple of years. I played varsity tennis until, again, once you're a goalie, it's I got sucked out to lacrosse junior year. And I have to say, I think that's the craziest sport to be a goalie in. It hurts so bad. But in lacrosse, you're kind of a wuss if you wear too much equipment.
Okay.
So,
So there's judgment is what you're saying.
There is definitely, which I didn't care at first, but, as I got a little bit better, I'm okay, now I care, now and then when I started playing club and stuff.
So you're considered super legit. The less equipment you wear, the more legit of a goalie you're considered.
I hope that it's changed since then. But at the time, definitely, and again, hopefully you're catching them and you're quick enough to do it. But when balls would get past, it's this hard rubber ball would hit you on bare skin. I'd have welts on my legs and stuff. Lacrosse was more of that camaraderie sport for me, and field hockey was my passion. That was this sport and thing that I did that I never knew I could be talented in. I never would have predicted that.
What's the one field hockey memory that you hold closest to your heart?
There was this one game at Babson. It was my freshman year, and we were playing Springfield, and Springfield's really good. They were a big competitor at the time, and the whole game was so high pressure. It was really low scoring. We were up 1-0, and it was a couple minutes left, and getting the shutout and also not losing. And there was like the last shot on goal that I saved. And it was like an out-of-body experience kind of thing, like where you're like jumping across and feel like, you know, the one hand's the stick and one's the flat mitt, and I like blocked it and had like an amazing save. And then after that game, I was named Conference Player of the Week. And it was just so cool seeing my name next to names that I admired so much, and doing that freshman year was like such a pinnacle of my work.
So how did you wind up at Babson? Because when I think of Babson, they have a fantastic school of entrepreneurship. So were you going more for academics? Were you being actively recruited as an athlete?
I remember it was sophomore or junior year when they could first send letters, and the first recruitment letter I got was from Brown University. And I opened the letter and I'm like, oh my God. Like, I'm being recruited by Brown, you know? And then I go to practice that weekend and everyone was like, oh, did you guys get the same recruitment letter from Brown? And I'm like, okay. So everyone got, but like, you know, on our team. And then I started getting letters from Yale and Harvard and Northeastern and BU and all these like amazing schools in D1. But being a goalie was really specific. You know, you had to be the goalie that they were gonna take, and that they needed a goalie, most likely would have to redshirt if I did that. And so it was more of a decision of thinking big picture. And I knew no matter where I went, I wanted to study business. So I always knew that. And when I decided to not go to a D1 school, and when I didn't get picked by any of the Ivies to be the goalie that year, I was like, I'm gonna go to the D1 of business, the Harvard of business. And I considered that Babson.
There are so many athletes and parents of athletes who have this mindset of D1 or bust. Mm-hmm. Was that your mindset going in, or were you open the whole time to explore whatever truly was the best opportunity for you?
It was my mindset, and it was more my parents who were like, it's also the college you're gonna go to for 4 years, you know, and all of this, or 5. But they were along with it of how I led it. They weren't necessarily pushing me at any point to do anything a particular way. And I think that because of that was why I ultimately, through that process, uncovered that Babson was the right choice for me. It was fun, you know, going to see my friends play at Harvard and Cornell and all these other schools. But once I made that decision, I never regretted it.
When you spoke with your girlfriends playing sports in Division I, what did you hear from them that was similar to or different from your experience as a Division III athlete?
It was so flipped. I feel like
Really?
In Division I, everything was field hockey, everything was sports. And they were telling me how much easier school was. I mean, these were friends at Harvard, you know? And in Division III, we were still, of course, a competitive team and all of that, but there were no concessions on academics. I mean, if anything, I got put into some harder classes because of my field hockey schedule. At one point I had to like switch out because you have to do all the 8 a.m. classes and you have to base it based on practice. So that was the one piece that I think was very different. All of us got a great education and all of that, of course, but I wasn't an on-campus celebrity in the way that I might have been at like a Division I school.
How about from a training standpoint?
From training, I think that I was really fortunate where I got all the benefits of a Division I experience in terms of the caliber and the quality of it. And now going back to Babson and seeing the facilities they have is amazing, and my coach is still there. But we didn't do like the beep test. Everyone talked about the beep test at Division I, like these like agility things and sprints. And I mean, there was less intimidation in terms of like qualifications and timings that you needed to do things. There weren't a whole lot of timed miles and 2 miles and things like that. We were competitive and had to do all these things, but I just remember like hearing my friends at Division I in preseason, like it was a different level of expectation.
Some of the best sports memories you have were at Babson, and some of the hardest sports memories you have were at Babson, specifically on the injury front.
Yeah.
So I know your game plan was to be there to initially play lacrosse and field hockey, to make it through all 4 years.
Going back to high school, I think I was really naive because I didn't play competitive sports really before high school. And I was really fortunate that I didn't have injuries in high school, with the exception of
You were
like,
very fortunate.
very, yeah, especially for how much I was playing and traveling. It was when I hit college that my first year, great. And then it was the spring when I was getting ready for lacrosse and we were having preseason. And you know, it's East Coast, so there's snow on the ground still and all of that. and we were just doing kind of rounds of shots on net, and I went to save the ball, and I did like a jump up, and I landed just weird. And it felt like a slight dislocation, but then like not that painful. I didn't hear anything like loud popping or anything like that, like you can hear sometimes people say. And so when the trainer came over and like was testing out my knee, I mean, he knew because they could know so easily, but I didn't know, and I didn't know anything about tearing your ACL. So it's the first time I've ever had a scan read, other than like an x-ray growing up or something like that. And the doctor tells me that I tore my ACL. And I was in shock, and I was like, well, like just a little bit? Because I didn't think I hurt myself that bad. And then I saw, he's like, nope, you fully tore it, you know? And that's when I learned so much more about that than I ever thought I would. I also tore my meniscus, and that was really the first time, like at that time in my life, that's the biggest thing that had ever happened to me. That was the most devastating thing. I felt like I was losing like everything. That was really my first time too with like really having to rehab a major injury. I already loved the trainers, of course, at school, but saw them more than I would have liked. When you have an injury, it's so much more than just playing a sport. Like it's a full-time additional sport that you're basically doing to train for and make sure that you can recover and all of that too.
And you get healthy, you get back in goal, you're having great success, and then it's another injury.
Yeah, and then the following spring, just, you know, I was like, okay, we're not gonna do lacrosse anymore. I came here to play field hockey. I'm gonna focus on field hockey. And just in like spring practices and training, I ended up subluxing my shoulder. And I had never dislocated anything or anything like that. And I learned that the difference was that like it came out and then I was able to get it back in. Which sounds gross, I know. And after that happened, it started happening more. Not like all the time, but it happened like a handful more times.
Enough to start making you think.
And that's when they were like, you can't keep playing unless you get it repaired. So we got that repaired. And that was really interesting because the ACL surgery was so major, but it's very different having an injury on your upper extremity than your leg. Because I mean, it was very uncomfortable to recover from. And also after coming off of such a long recovery. And it was after that I recovered and I was getting back into playing, and I definitely lost a little bit of that zest because I'm like, man, I have just spent so much time recovering these injuries. And that's when I started really thinking through like, what else can I do that might fill this void? And is this the way that I want to spend the rest of college?
So was hanging up your sports career as easy as you make it sound now?
No, it's still hard. I go back and see the team and it's nothing but great memories and all of this, but I ended up with a part of college that I wasn't doing the thing that I really went to college to do. At the time, it was like losing the most important thing of my life.
There's always a discussion when athletes talk to other athletes about what did you find to replace the adrenaline rush of competition? And in a way, I almost feel like you were really lucky because you found that as a business management major at Babson and really sort of took that athlete aspect of your mindset into academics.
Having played sports at such a difficult school, I mean, Babson is it's a small, very focused school. Like you can't hide in a lecture hall. Freshman year, your first class you take in that first semester is starting a business. It's called Foundation Management Experience. And you start diving right into the entrepreneurship piece, which I loved. But you also have to take every accounting class, every statistics class, and finance. Like it doesn't matter if you like sales and marketing, you still have to take all the foundations of everything else.
Full disclosure, I was today years old when I found out there's such a thing as the National Collegiate Sales Competition. What is this? And how did it become your sport?
I got an email about the Babson Sales Organization. We're doing, interviews to compete in the National Sales Competition in Atlanta. And so first I thought, cool, go to Atlanta. And I thought sales, I feel like I would really like that. I like sales. I just went into it and I started feeling so natural. It felt so good, kind of like when I tried out for JV field hockey and got into goal for the first time. You show up in Atlanta and you actually go into rooms like as if it were you're pitching to someone in their office. And there's people watching from cameras, different executives and people. And it's also like a great place to get recruited and all of that. And as an example, I had to sell, UPS to a company using FedEx. What we had to practice in advance was following the sales process, everything from building rapport, all these things. And so it's kind of like going into your game, but this time the game was doing a proper sales pitch. I've never done anything like that before, and I don't know that I've done anything like that since. But it was really fun, and I did well, and I got a lot of like internship opportunities from that and other things, but it opened my eyes to the actual career that I wanted. Because going into Babson, I knew I loved business, the entrepreneurship angle, but it's not like I've always had this business idea I wanted to do or this specific role I thought I would like. This is where it narrowed down to I was no longer just playing field hockey, but I was a field hockey goalie. Yeah. And now I wasn't just in business, I was a salesperson.
How did that experience feed your competitive nature?
In every way you would think of as an athlete, because everything with sales is what you put in is what you get out. When I started realizing the work I put in, the activity I do, how good I am at this, that's gonna make me more money. What promotions I would get, what things I would get from there was all based on me. I got to control that, and that felt really empowering.
You cut your teeth in financial services. That was where you spent the good chunk of your career time before being diagnosed with breast cancer. Mm-hmm. What did it take for you to be an award-winning salesperson?
So the first year that I worked in outside sales, I sold payroll, and I knew nothing about selling payroll or even what payroll really, I don't know, does anyone really think all that much about payroll? And I started doing all of these trainings, and it was literally door-to-door, business-to-business sales. And I really like business-to-business because it's not like I'm just like cold calling individuals. It was like I understood it. And when I started, they were basically like, here's a zip code. And I'd already moved to LA, so I'm out like in the Beverly Hills area. I'm walking door to door, checking in with businesses. And my first deal ever was at this Carl's Custom Lamps. I don't even know if it's still there, on 3rd Street in LA. And they're a small company, lamp store. I ended up selling them the deal. And I realized after that they had a no soliciting sign on the door that I just didn't notice. And they told me.
Just blew right by it.
Yeah, and they told me after, they're like, did you notice that? And I was like, oh no, I'm so sorry. And I just sold them the deal. We went through and set them up, and they were like, no, we just felt so connected to you. We wanted to still meet with you anyway, and ended up doing it. And that's when I was like, I can build these relationships and do these things. And from that small first sale, which I literally have the sales order in my office framed, grew to selling multi-million-dollar 401k plans and other things. And I realized that the tool of connection and trust and being genuine and having good intentions matters, and that I could do that throughout my career and be successful in it.
What do you think made you a better salesperson than the average bear?
I am really good at following the instructions of where people are guiding you to go.
So you're saying you're coachable?
I'm coachable. You know what? That was way better. I'm very coachable. I actually do say that a lot. I'm very coachable. I really do think I don't have an ego about how something is done. I care about the ultimate result and how we're getting there. Yeah. And whenever there would be a thing, like I was selling payroll, but if the focus that week was on workers' comp or like ancillary products, I would always follow what that thing was. And so I always knew what they wanted us to focus on based on where we had incentives and things. And by doing that, I was following this bigger model, right, that they're doing nationwide, even worldwide, to train salespeople. And so by following it and not resisting it, I was way more successful.
You being in financial services and specifically working with clients about their retirement plans is such a relevant conversation for athletes right now, especially with NIL, the opportunity for college athletes to monetize their name, image, and likeness. And we know this is going to trickle down to high school too.
Yeah.
I feel like you were so fortunate to have exposure to that as young as you were. What did you learn about retirement plans, 401ks, that if you had an audience of teenage or college athletes, what would you say to them to really start getting the wheels spinning about investing and paying attention to that earlier in their adult life?
In general, I always say this, don't be short-sighted about anything, but specifically here, save early and save often, because even though it feels so far out, retirement, you're accumulating wealth throughout your life. And when you do it early, trust me, you feel it before you're retired. There's so many things you can do with that savings, and the way that things compound and can double over the amount of times, the money that you put in now is worth so much more than if you put that money in 20 years from now.
So you're working your corporate job, but it's not enough because Elissa has to be doing lots of things at the same time. Opening a gym, why?
Back to when I went to Babson, I think I always knew that I needed to do something that was starting my own business. And that's why I loved outside sales, because it feels entrepreneurial. Because even though you're working for a big company, you get to manage your territory and, to some extent, like how you're doing it. If you're hitting your numbers, like you're good. And I had left the corporate world and went independent as a financial advisor. And once I did that, I got that itch of like, well, now I'm independent. I own my own business, so I can really do whatever I want. And I met someone where I was playing tennis at the time, actually, at like a networking thing, who was a franchise broker. And I learned about this franchise that was really new. And of course, being who I am, I looked into it and I negotiated like not paying franchise fees and being their first studio model. And of course, LA is a great hub for them to be able to say that. And so we kind of worked out a deal that, opening a gym is a ton of work. So
Tell me more about that.
Yeah, when I opened the gym, it really was a whirlwind of looking back, and I'm like, I can't believe I did that. But I do that about so many things. Like I booked a one-way ticket to LA the week after I graduated from Babson with no job. And I'm so glad I did that. And I always think back to that time and I'm like, that was so amazing. I never felt better than when I felt like it was like I could do anything. Yeah. And worst case, I went back, right? But I haven't. I've been here 16 years. And so when I opened the gym, it was a lot of work. It was a huge risk, but I was maintaining my book of business and I was still an advisor. So I had luckily built up a great book of clients. My main focus were 401ks, and I was still maintaining that. I had a great business partner at the time who ran the brokerage, and that was helping me out. And so when I did that, I first presented to him, like, here's what I'm thinking of doing. He was super supportive. So I just did a whole lot of things I've never done before. I mean, it's different starting a gym when you're a personal trainer and you're bringing in clientele. I was doing it from a business perspective and an athlete perspective of that I want to have a place that, like, if I could be in the gym every day and it's mine. And I was in great shape then, right?
That is like the best case scenario for 99% of us.
Right? It's one of the most meaningful things I've ever done and one of the hardest things by far that I've ever done.
Why was it so meaningful and why was it so hard?
It was so meaningful because the people that I met, I don't know if I would have ever met them. I met people, hundreds of people, on such a varying degree of life, age, career, that I still keep in close contact with. I mean, some that are going through breast cancer diagnoses, some from other diagnoses that I've lost since then. And all of these things that it's like we created this, literally a fitness family, right? We had the Fit Fam.
And it's a network and a community.
Yeah.
Right? Describe the day-to-day building and growing the gym.
It was like a 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. job. And what they always say about entrepreneurs, like, we'll work, 80 hours a week to avoid working 40 hours a week.
Yes.
And I felt that because it was such a rush. It felt like the athlete effect of sales, put that into sales in your business for like survival, right? Because you want to make sure that you're continuing to be able to run it, was like why it can be so stressful, but why it was like, it was so what I needed at that time. And I think I needed to experience that in my life. And everyone around me knew it. Like even my friend who's my CPA, like what I was doing, he's like, it's really, you should not do this. But I know you're going to, so do it and I'll help.
Well, it gave you that adrenaline rush that we were talking about, that adrenaline rush that replaces what we get from competition. You were getting that in the gym.
Absolutely. And it was the kind of thing that from the very beginning, if a coach or like a trainer didn't show up, I mean, I was on call. I taught everything from kids yoga to boxing classes to jiu-jitsu, like whatever needed to happen, I filled in. And it was the kind of thing I also call like my MBA. And I was fortunate that I sold it and I didn't get rich off of it, but I was able to make some money off of it and move on. And the value that I took from that, I very much believe that WeGotThis.org would not exist if I didn't open the gym.
How do you think your athlete self showed up differently in corporate America versus the world of entrepreneurship?
It's so different being a member of the team or being the captain or the coach. And I think that's the biggest difference is when you're a member of a team, when you're a salesperson and you're the top salesperson, you can ask for things. You have resources, you have a back end. When you're with a big company, you have operations, all these things. You're not creating that. And then when I do something like open the gym or start a nonprofit, I'm creating the free class cards that are being handed out. When I'm pitching for funding, I'm creating that deck and that pitch. I'm not pulling it from all of these things that have been created by huge departments at this huge Fortune 500 company.
And every single person you hire matters.
So much. And it's every dollar that comes in or out is noted. I used to always tell that to people at the gym that every time a member signs up, like that was a celebration. That was noted, that was talked about in my home. Like they were a part of our family. And I do believe that they felt that, and that's why it was successful, and that's why it's lived on beyond the gym itself.
So fast forward to age 34. You are thriving, you've had a successful career in finance, you have started, built, sold a gym. You and your wonderful husband, Eric, have a little daughter named Ellie who's just about 1. Mm-hmm. And then life hits you with a brick, stage 4 breast cancer. Mm-hmm. How would you put that in layman's terms?
Well, at first, when I hear that, like HER2 positive, metastatic, I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And even the way they said it when I got the call that the biopsies were malignant. And I was like, are you telling me that I have breast cancer? Because I know what malignant means, I know what breast cancer is, but I've never said that from my perspective or thinking of me having it. Yeah. And I was instantly thrown into this action mode of, and you never know how you're going to react until it happens. And I think from what we've discussed as an athlete, it's not a surprise how I reacted. But I went right into, like, what do we do? And I also went right into, in addition to that, how do I tell my family and make sure that they're okay? People will say things like, well, at least you caught it early and you're young. And it's like, but I didn't catch it early. Like I got one of the worst case scenarios you could get. Yeah. And that's where my life's mission has become so clear. And that's where it relates so much to sports, is because it's not about what's holding you back. It's how you persevere through it and resilience. And these are words that I think we say a lot. And now it's like I feel it in a whole other way.
Yeah. We as athletes have extraordinarily high pain tolerance. We avoid doctors at all costs, and we think we can fix everything on our own. Mm-hmm. What was going on inside you that made you think, this is more than something that I can handle on my own?
I'm actually grateful that I am competitive and I like playing sports, because I think that if it didn't affect me playing tennis or being active, I might not have cared as much. And I wouldn't have worked so hard to figure this out. Right. And so luckily that was the case. And with pain tolerance, it is something that I stay really mindful of, because I think not only as athletes, but as women, we think a lot of things are normal that aren't. And we're told things are normal that aren't. And I'm fortunate that I have such a great support system, that I had people encouraging me to advocate, that I'm in a city with great doctors and not great doctors. Like my first oncologist I would not recommend to anyone, but I was able to find the right fits. And I think that the energy that it took to find the right team was something that I knew I deserved, because I never would have gone to a college and played field hockey for a team that I didn't align with or I didn't feel comfortable with. And I wasn't going to let my oncology team be the ones telling me that I was going to die in 5 to 7 years. I found the one that was on board to fight with me and like play the long game.
Was that the initial prognosis, was that you had 5 to 7 years?
Yeah, so at the time that I was diagnosed in July of 2021, if you Googled it, the actual statistics at that time was that there was a 20% chance that I would make it past 5 years. The average life expectancy at that time was only 18 to 24 months. There are a lot of people living longer because there's a lot of advancements, but for statistics and things to catch up, it takes a while because you're talking averages. So there's so many scenarios and cases. And when I asked the doctor to like hit it to me straight, like what is the worst best case scenario? I'll never forget. So I'm 34 at the time that I was diagnosed. And she says, well, the average life expectancy is 18 to 24 months, but 20% make it past 5 years. Like 5 years is becoming a lot more common. I even have patients living 6, 7 years. And I said, are you saying that the upside here, like the big thing,
the upside here is 7 years,
is for me to hit 40? Like that's not okay. That's not our goal. And I'm okay with being realistic. I want to be realistic, but I also want to know like where we're going, right? Like when you get into the NCAA tournament and you're playing a team that's ranked way higher than you, you're not going in being like, well, it's okay, we might lose. Like, no, you go in like playing your hardest to win. And I got a second opinion and got in with an amazing doctor at UCLA where I'm treated now. And she was like, no. These are the statistics. But we're in the golden age of research and things for HER2-positive breast cancer, for metastatic breast cancer. People are living longer, and yes, it's still terminal because there are limited amounts of treatments. But, we're all terminal, and we all can die, right? I have a much higher likely because of what I live with. But her optimism of that's not even a number we should even be talking about until we've hit much more boundaries, right? I've been on 6 different lines of treatments now, and there's plenty more. We're not at a point where we're done. Like, we're not at a point where we're doing experimental things. Like, I'm doing proven things. And that was the reassurance that I needed. And I was like, that's who I want leading my team.
So you were going to doctors, but you hadn't yet figured out what was going on. In steps your husband. Feel free to finish the story.
Well, as I've mentioned, Eric and I love each other very much.
Which is a good thing.
And I'm very grateful for that. And it was one morning I was getting dressed and he came over and playfully copped a feel. And, we have a great relationship. It's not the first time he's copped a feel, but it felt different. And he kind of flinched like, oh, what is that? And I was like, what do you mean? And I felt it, and it felt a lot how a clogged milk duct felt, but I hadn't breastfed in months. And I was like, that's weird. And he was like, I didn't mean to make you nervous. I'm sure it's nothing. And I wasn't nervous. Like I said, up until through the biopsies, I was like, it's nothing. I don't have cancer. And it prompted me enough, though, that like you hear enough times, you have a lump in your breast. You should check your breast. You should get it checked. And it was from all that repetition and all of that I did that. And I'm so glad that was my instinct. And what I will say for people, because I've experienced since, knowing that there's tumors in my breast that I couldn't feel or could at certain times of the month or others, knowing our bodies, and if you're comfortable with your partner and them knowing them too, it's really important, not just one day of the month. Like I love, any things we can use, like feel it on the first, all that's super important, but feel it all the time. Know your body, know you're normal. Know that it's not normal if your feet are going numb when you're playing tennis. That if you're having back pain, like you deserve to feel comfortable and it's okay to speak up. Because I think that the more people that speak up, it's way more common for people to find their own breast cancer. I got the worst case scenario, right? I went in and I got the stage 4 diagnosis and I'm here and I'm thriving. And do I wish that I didn't have to live with it? Yes. I hope that other people don't have to, but other people do. And there are other people who will catch it early because they'll see this or they'll have a friend who tells them to catch it. And I have so many of those friends and stories now that I'm glad that they've shared with me. And what I will tell you is that of all the people who call me that they found a lump or they had an abnormal mammogram, the vast majority, everything is fine and it's nothing. And for the few times that it is something, it saves their lives.
By the time you were diagnosed, your family had already gone through something very traumatic. You had lost your brother, Josh, I think it was 6 years earlier. How did that loss and the way you grieved it and what you and your family learned coming out of it impact the way you processed being told you had breast cancer?
Well, back when my brother passed away, I actually forgot this, was right about when I was going to be signing the lease for the gym. And a lot of people said, you don't have to do it. You can back out. You don't need to do it. There's so much happening. I said, no, this is more reason why I have to do it. And that's so similar to my reaction of when I was diagnosed and the things that I needed to do. And I think that having gone through, losing my brother is still the hardest thing that I've gone through and still go through. And understanding grief, which I still have yet to understand so much of, but I think that I built a new layer of empathy and understanding that I never had before because I hadn't.
Such an individual process, you know?
So everyone is so different, right? Everyone in my family was different of how they grieved it and understood it. And it was after that that I felt a different level of connection to people. If someone would post that they lost a sibling or a parent or someone passed away or someone said it, I wouldn't be afraid of asking them what happened or talking to them about it because I knew how much and we're all different, of course, but doing that in a sensitive way was something that I never would have done pre-losing my brother. And after losing him, I handled that so differently. Similar with cancer. I would have been nervous to ask even my mother-in-law who had gone through it when she was going through chemo. I would never ask her about side effects or other things. I also didn't know what to ask. Yeah. And it was funny when she visited after when I was going through chemo and we were like, oh yeah, did you have this? And oh my God, my port. And you realize it's like, people want to have connection and talk about it a lot of the time, I've found. And having had that grief experience, I realized how similar it was to grieving a diagnosis, to grieving a life that you lived so differently. If we can learn to empathize and understand rather than always having to relate. It's like, I can't understand what someone else is going through with cancer. I can't understand what a parent of a child with cancer is going through or what Eric's going through as my caregiver, but I can empathize and I can take the energy and time to make them feel seen. And that's what really felt right after experiencing that with my brother and then realizing that my parents had to also have their, only living child now living with cancer.
When you say breast cancer is so many things, tell me more.
So we said earlier HER2 positive. There's different types like triple negative, triple positive, hormone positive. So I'm not estrogen or progesterone positive. So people are always like, oh yeah, my sister's uncle's aunt had exactly what you have. It's like
probably not quite.
Yeah, and I probably doubt that you know what she had, you know. What you do for treatment, for surgeries, radiation is totally different depending on your diagnosis. To me, I've had cancer in my liver, I've had cancer in my lower spine, my lymph nodes, and I've had tumors in my brain.
Well, if you're going to do it right. There you go.
Go big or go home.
We don't mess around. If we're going to do cancer, we are going to do it right.
I'm an overachiever, and if I'm going to do it, I'm doing it all the way, and kicking its butt all the way too. But with that, you start realizing, oh, cancer in my breast isn't so scary anymore, because cancer in your breast isn't what you die from. And I think a really optimistic statistic right now is that, yes, a lot more people are getting diagnosed with breast cancer and much younger, but a lot more people are living with it and living full lives with it. We're constantly weighing out how we keep me alive as long as possible so that I can continue to be here on treatments as long as it will last and as new advancements come out.
So there's this team aspect of your cancer journey, but the reality is there are certain things that only you can handle. And what I mean by that is how you process the ebbs and flows of having terminal breast cancer. And I know that about a year into your treatment, there was a recurrence in your left breast and in your brain. And this was arguably the toughest part. Take me back into that mindset and what you felt and what you were thinking.
I think that's something that would really surprise people, is that the hardest part wasn't finding out that I had brain tumors. The hardest part was when I lived for the first time in a body and in feeling like I couldn't continue living in it. I was nauseous for 2 weeks at a time in between infusions where I was throwing up every day. I couldn't take Ellie to school. I couldn't sit up without having like severe like back pain and discomfort. And I was in bed like wanting to not be living. And I didn't want to hurt myself. I didn't want to die, but I also didn't know if I wanted to be alive. Like this was like, I can't live this way. And it took me a long time to really speak up about it because we're competitive. And when I got diagnosed, I said, I'm gonna be as aggressive as possible. I'm gonna do everything that it takes. Don't worry about me. I got this, you know? And it was at this point that I realized I had never been really clinically depressed in my life. I had never experienced what this felt like. And it changed everything. It was 6 months of really suffering for me to have, I think, the rest of my life living fully.
Take Elissa, the athlete, out of that scenario. Mm-hmm. How different do you think it might have been?
As a whole, athlete or not, I think we all have this piece in us that wants to fight for the people around us and for ourselves. And I think that's why we all have an inner athlete, right? We all have our different limits, but having gone through an ACL repair and a labrum repair, I was no longer in the mindset that I play injured, right? Like I was as injured as I could get in life of this chemo treatment. And I think that maybe part of the athlete in me was what also helped me speak up, to be like, this isn't safe anymore. Like, I'm not playing safely anymore, and I need to figure out a different solution.
Clearly, you are a grinder to the highest degree. And it would have been very simple and quite frankly understandable if your choice was to focus solely on the treatment, even though this is something that you're going to need to do the rest of your life. But instead, no, you decide to start a nonprofit and write a book and start speaking all over the country to share your story, to empower people, to enable people to take their lives back. So let's start with wegotthis.org. What was your personal experience that inspired your interest in bringing this, the first gift registry for cancer patients to life?
We talked about Ellie and how it was right before her first birthday that I was getting diagnosed. And how lucky am I that I have the most amazing support system and people wanting to reach out and help. And when this happens, I think from outside of the patient perspective, you have to understand that like I'm having people I went to high school with I may not have spoken to since then that find out that someone their age has stage 4 cancer. You know, and my family, my extended family, people who know it, like they're all figuring it out and everyone reacts in a different way. And a lot of people reach out and they want to help because people feel helpless. And when I started getting all the texts of how can I help, what can I do, I had a note saved on my phone that I would just keep copying over and tweaking slightly.
Let me guess, I'm good, I got this.
I'm good. Just you reaching out is enough. Like I also felt the need to make them feel seen. We're all good. And
copy, paste, yeah.
So what I learned really quickly was that people want to help. And because I didn't allow them to help, people helped in their own way. And I joke that the majority of people sent me blankets.
So you were very warm.
I ended up with like 30 blankets. I mean, there was one blanket from Amazon with words of affirmation that I had in 3 different colors, which honestly, how great that each one thought to give me a different color. So I thought back to when I was pregnant, and no one is assuming which baby bottles you're gonna buy, or they're not sending you random diapers, right? You register for it. And it's almost frustrating if someone doesn't register because you're like, I don't know what you're gonna need and I wanna buy you something. And I thought about back from our wedding, same thing, and how we make it really uncomfortable and more complicated in the hard times like cancer. And that stuck with me, and that was the first impact, but you know, I wasn't thinking of doing anything with it. I was starting chemo. And it was in my 5th round of chemo where everyone's telling you to focus on yourself, just get better. And I realized not only was I in the roughest part of chemo, like it was the more aggressive initial 8 rounds, but after that, I wasn't done. I was gonna be in treatment for the rest of my life. And if I spent the rest of my life focused on my illness, that was not gonna work. And it was in my 5th round where I realized that I couldn't wait till after, I couldn't wait till later for what I was gonna do next, it had to be now. Yeah. And the people closest to me understood that. And of course, a lot of people who cared about me were worried, were like, don't push yourself. You don't need to fix things. You don't need to do all this. Just take care of yourself. And this genuinely was my way of taking care of myself, and how great that the form of therapy and fulfillment for me is also something that can help the masses. And it went from this smaller idea of I need to do something to hopping on the phone with some Babson friends, and bada bing, bada boom, we have a nonprofit tech startup.
What are some of the things that cancer patients might benefit from that are on the registry that maybe we might not be thinking about?
The first thing that stuck out to me most was I showed up to my first round of chemo, and there were a lot of tips I got in advance. One that didn't make it to me in time was that there are certain forms of chemo that can cause neuropathy, which is like tingling and numbness in your fingers and feet. And when I got there, they were like, do you want us to let you know when to put on the ice packs? And I was like, what ice packs? They were like, there's a couple of the drugs that you're getting that can cause that. And a lot of people use like these hand midden ice packs and these ice pack socks. I was like, I didn't get that memo. So my first chemo round, they brought in like a bucket of ice that I put my feet in, and once put my fingers in.
As if you're not already uncomfortable enough.
It was horrible. Horrible. Oncology nurses are just like cut from a different cloth. They are angels and they're amazing. And it was while I was getting my infusion that they were showing me. They were helping me go online and be like, yeah, these are the ones everyone seems to like the most, get these. And so like that is an example to me of something who would know. I wouldn't have known unless someone told me or I'd gone through chemo. So those are things I started recommending. Comfortable socks. We started partnering with different brands and things that provided comfort. And there's a lot of stereotypical things like barf bags or wigs, of course, were a lot of things. And I realized early on I got prepared with wigs. My mom and I went wig shopping. I had an amazing nonprofit out of New York called 5 Under 40 that helped me get like a real hair wig. And we did it virtually and everything. And it was so fulfilling and amazing. And I would wear that on date nights and feel great. But on an everyday basis, it wasn't me. Like I'm the crazy goalkeeper. I'm not the one who needs to feel like my hair's all done up. Like, I don't care. I just wanted to feel like myself, and that didn't feel like me. And so those were examples of things where I felt like we had gaps. And that's where I was like, we need to make sure that people feel validated to also register for the things that aren't stereotypical cancer.
I'm so glad you're bringing this up because it takes the discomfort away. So you and your husband, Eric, live life to the fullest with or without any sort of health condition. Mm-hmm. And in reading about the site and how much you encourage people to do the fun things, talk a little bit more about that and why it's so important to almost destigmatize the notion of even doing that.
I think that this is an example that people can relate to, I think, for anything that happens in life. There are just certain things where you assume because this is happening to me, I have to be like this. And during this time where I was in aggressive chemo and I'm immunocompromised and it's still kind of COVID and all these things, the first thing that I thought was like, it's gonna be so long till we ever get to go to a concert again. And that's a big part of our life. Eric's a musician, I love music, we love going to shows. And my friend Adina called us one night and was like, there's a show at the Greek. The VIP is through plexiglass, it's outside, the Greek's outside. She's like, ask your oncologist, I feel like you could come, right? Like maybe that we can make this work. So I asked my oncologist and she's like, I think, wear a mask, be careful, but like, I think that you should go. I think you can do it if you want to do it. And I went and I felt so much like myself. It was like amazing. And I thought, this is just as important as my treatment, as all the other things, as staying safe, is like being strategic about it, but being me and not feeling, and I think that this resonated with me so much because again, I'm in this mindset that this isn't temporary. Like some of this is temporary, but this is something I'm gonna be going through for the rest of my life.
When you think about the community that has been built through your nonprofit, what is the most fulfilling part of it that maybe you didn't anticipate?
It's really the messages that I get from people that I don't know, who say that they've been following me for a couple of years, or recently a friend of ours said, we got this to my cousin who just got diagnosed with breast cancer. And she said, oh wow, you know Elissa? I've been following her and all of this. And the fact that people that I don't know are seeing this and it's making an impact and it's making them feel seen and validated is what's really flipped a switch in my brain. So I've thought about this a lot recently of how we say a lot, people will say like, if it helps just one person, it's worth it. And yes, that's great to help one person, but why do we need to stop there? Like, we have the ability to help so much more. And I think that people don't realize the impact that they make. And that's why it went from being like, my life's mission is creating the first nonprofit gift registry for cancer patients, to being that my life's mission is making the biggest impact in my lifetime that I can. And that's a change that's just like, I mean, I've gotten messages from people in hospice who have watched a live stream of events that we've done and felt a part of our community and a part of our team.
When you talk about your ability to have impact beyond the cancer community, I see that so much in your book. First of all, I love all the sports references. You talk about how you've channeled your inner field hockey player, your inner gym owner, boxer, triathlete, all the things. But you also talk about how by sharing your journey, you help to shift mindset for anybody who's struggling with some sort of challenge. How do you translate that?
I realized early on that it was bigger than just cancer. It was bigger than my one experience, that anyone going through a hard time was going likely through a lot of the things that I was going through. And I also realized really quickly, having such an amazing caregiver, my husband and Eric, is that there's so many elements to this. And not only are we like a fingerprint as the patient, but then there's all these different layers of supporters. And I just felt really inclined when doing this that it wasn't about only helping this type of person or these people here, that if we could find a way to help everyone, we should do it.
I can't even begin to imagine how challenging it is to communicate to a child that their parent has terminal breast cancer. I wouldn't ask you to give anybody advice because everybody has their own journey and that's an uncomfortable position to put you in. But what have you learned about the way you've shared your cancer journey with Ellie that could be helpful for people who are going through the same thing?
Everyone is different, like you're saying. Like what we would do for our family is going to be different from someone else. It also depends on how many kids you have, their age. When I was first diagnosed and Ellie was essentially turning 1, it was after the second round of chemo that my hair was really coming out, and I was ready to shave it. It felt like this moment where I could take control, and I didn't want to wake up with clumps of hair. I didn't want to feel it. And I think it's different when you're experiencing it yourself versus on the outside, because I have thick hair. So to my family and to Eric, like, it still looked good, but it didn't feel good. It was really traumatic as it was happening. And I said, I think that I would be less traumatized if I just got rid of it. And they were like, we're just worried what Ellie, is she gonna be scared and all of this? And so I said, today's the day I'm shaving my head. You can come or not. It's happening today, and we're gonna just dive right in. And I came home after shaving my head, and I have pictures of it, of Ellie just like, she like looked at it, she laughed, she touched it, and that was it. And it was, kids don't know, and you learn, like, this is me, first time parent, like, Ellie doesn't know what that means. She doesn't know that that means I have cancer, that I could die. Like, she doesn't know how to talk yet. And that was what I think really changed the way that I parented with cancer the whole time. We've been open with her, and we use the word cancer a lot. When she sees that we got this logo, she knows what it is. She's the first one to be like, cancer sucks, we got this.
She's also involved, she's in a lot of the videos that you do online.
Yeah.
What is it like, do you think, as you're watching her doing stuff with you, how do you think that's potentially helpful to create a normalcy around it to a certain degree?
I don't want Ellie to equate cancer only with death and dying. I want her to see how much I live with it. And I think normalizing that for her and for everyone is a huge part of the impact that I hope to make and I hope that I have made.
I've spoken with a lot of athletes who have been diagnosed with cancer, and they insist that working out right after has been so paramount in their journey, which to me might sound antithetical. Oh, maybe you're not feeling so great, you just want to go home and rest. I know it's something that you've done religiously as well. So can you speak a little bit about why you chose to do it and what you felt as a result of it?
Absolutely. And it was advice that I got too, of What I started doing was I was reaching out to my friends who are dietitians, who are trainers. Like, I own a gym, I've been in this. So I had a great community to call. When you first get your infusion of chemo, you think like you're just gonna be sick right away. And you're really not. It's kind of a couple days later that it really hits you. And so we would plan out what I could do and what my expectation of myself was based on that and being realistic. I've always been really big about meeting yourself where you're at. And I think that that's important because also, if you just don't exercise through chemo, that's okay too. Like, there's no reason to feel guilty about why you got cancer, how you treat your cancer, how you're living with it. Like, we're all different and we have to meet ourselves with how we're reacting to it. But it was really important to me and it felt really good to exercise. I actually feel like I was in pretty good shape in those initial 8 rounds. And what I loved most about it was I was really into boxing because I had a cardio boxing gym. We had a bag at home. And Ellie was in one of those walkers at the time. And I would do rounds of boxing and she loved it. Like, she would start getting all excited and pounding the thing and like seeing me fighting. And it was just like, it was so great. And I got her little 2-ounce gloves to put on and she still has loved exercising since.
July 1st, 2026 will be your 5-year cancerversary. On a scale of 1 to 10, what role has your inner athlete played in being where you're at now?
I mean, I have to say a 10. I think about sports with everything. From day one of being diagnosed, I said there's no I in cancer. I mean, it's a part of everything that I think of. And it's not just the fighting cancer. And that's even a funny term that not all metastatic people like, or even people with cancer like, because it's, to a lot of people it feels like a win or a loss. I don't think of it that way. And I think that's because I'm an athlete. Like, it's not about whether you win or lose. It's like about how we show up. I know that the way that I'm showing up now is the way I showed up on the field. And it's why I couldn't just live with cancer. It's why I needed to start the nonprofit. I needed to do the book. Because when I thought of these ideas and what I was wanting to do, and even though everyone was telling me I didn't have to do it, I knew that I could do it and that I wanted to. And I felt like when I got diagnosed, everyone lowered the bar for me. And I know that it was with good intention, but they wanted to make sure that I knew that I didn't need to do all these things. But I wasn't in a place where I wanted to lower the bar for myself. I've never been one to lower the bar, and that's never who I will be.
I absolutely love one of Elissa's core messages through We Got This. No matter what's going on in your life, you deserve joy. Get the babysitter. Go on date nights. Live like Elissa lives. If you have cancer or you know somebody who does, please check out wegotthis.org. The link is in our show notes, as are all the ways you can connect with Elissa and us for feedback and guest suggestions and all the things. And before you go, if you could please take a second to subscribe to our podcast, download, share, review. Every friend counts as we build our community, and we so appreciate you taking the time to support us. Shout out to our podcast squad: Allison Johnson, Carlos Delgado, Jess Levy, and Kim Neal. The Athlete Effect podcast is a Walked Swiftly production, copyright 2026, all rights reserved. Once an athlete, always an athlete. We'll see you again next time.